support.
The maestro, please!
Already on Pop Analysis number 2 of 2026, because we're basically going to retread some ground from Pop Analysis number 11 of 2025, and that's because today we're going to be doing a Pop Analysis on Taylor Swift's Opalite.
Taylor Swift.
Well, it really hasn't been that long at all since we last talked about her, given we do have a couple of throwbacks, such as... And
for a fortnight there we were, forever running to you.
but really, we did just go over her most recent number 1 hit, that being...
Save my heart from the fate of Ophelia.
And honestly, since then, she hasn't been up to much, because, well, there hasn't been much time to do anything else.
Background.
Opalite was released as a single on January 12th, 2026, given originally it charted all the way back in October of 2025 at number 2. That's pretty much what its highest peak was, even after being released as a single, but thanks to the music video, which was released on February 8th, it finally hit number 1 as of the end of February. Now, there are a number of different versions of this song, such as the acoustic version that was released back on November 7th of 2025.
And now the sky is opalite.
But the recent surge can really be more credited, along with the music video and being released as a single, because of all the remixes that were released only on February 20th. There are 4 in total, and they come from Chris Lake,
Now the sky is opalite.
Ellie Oaks,
Now the sky is opalite. We couldn't have,
Bunt,
but now the sky is opalite.
and finally Scream.
Now the sky is opalite.
As alluded to earlier, this is the second single off of Taylor Swift's most recent album, The Life of a Showgirl. At this point, we're retreading ground that we already have gone over since October, so if you want all the details on the album, go watch the Pop Analysis on The Fate of Ophelia. Similarly speaking, we have the same credits as The Fate of Ophelia. Besides Taylor Swift, we have Max Martin and Shellback. And again, it's been like a handful of months, so they haven't done anything else outside of this album. Also, yes, that means it's the same label, so this is released solely by Republic.
Form.
Opalite is listed as a pop rock, soft rock, and synth pop song, is just under 4 minutes, is an E minor, 4/4 time, and 125 beats per minute. After the very quick instrumental intro, we get the first verse,
I had a bad habit.
followed by the first pre-chorus,
All of the foes and all of the friends.
and then the first chorus.
But my mama told me it's alright.
We then get a second verse,
She was in her phone and you were just a pose.
a second pre-chorus,
Move on.
and wouldn't you know it, a second chorus.
Oh my lord, never meant
We then have a bridge,
this is just.
a third and final chorus,
But now the sky is opalite.
which ultimately ends the song.
Oh, 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 oh.
Electric guitar.
The electric guitar is the very first thing we hear in the entirety of the song, doing this sort of pseudo-syncopated strumming pattern, but it's really just going back and forth between C major 7 and D major. As the song actually starts going, though, it does change its pattern to end certain phrases, doing this sort of pattern, the C major 7 to D major, but then going to the E minor and then a quick G major before ending on a G major 9 chord. Things get a bit more interesting during the chorus. We have an electric guitar up top playing the main chords, going G major and E minor 7, but then we have an additional lower guitar doing this sort of melodic line that goes up and down. It doubles a lot of it with the bass. That continues into the back half of the chorus. We have the upper guitar doing A minor 7 going to D sus 4, and the bottom guitar ends with this lovely descending figure going that D C B A. The only additional figure we have is actually during the bridge. The guitar does these quick little picks on B, and even these repeated ones towards the end on, again, that B, before dropping to the B that's an octave lower at the very end.
Acoustic guitar.
By comparison, the acoustic guitar has a much more simplistic strumming pattern, no syncopation, and you can see it actually holds a C major chord for a much longer time than the harmonic rhythm would imply, but it still does end on that D major chord at the end. During the pre-chorus, though, it does change things up a bit. It does that C major chord, but not nearly as long before repeating what the electric guitar did before, that E minor, G major, and then G major 9 chord. During the chorus, it's pretty simplistic. We have a straight eighth note strumming pattern, 2 bars of G major, 2 bars of E minor. Which continues to 2 bars of C major, 1 bar of that D sus4 before it finally resolves on just a D major chord for the last bar.
Bass guitar.
The bass in the form of a guitar is a little more interesting comparatively speaking to the 2 guitars we talked about before. A lot of eighth notes, but it does have these occasional slides between various figures. Just like the other 2 guitars, though, it does change things at the end of the pre-chorus. Those first 2 bars are pretty much the same, but those last bars it now is doing in rhythm with the other 2 guitars to accentuate the different chord changes. It actually gets much more active during the chorus. Yes, it starts off with just these plucked eighth notes, but it does all of these connecting lines from each sub-phrase to the next. You can actually see that it starts to jump around quite a bit as well, going from that low G all the way to that D on the middle of the staff, and then does the descending figure just like the electric guitar did before it, that D, C, B, A. Similarly, during the bridge with the electric guitar, it does hit those D notes, but it doesn't do the repeated eighth notes that the guitar does, or that drop at the very end.
Synth.
We do have one more instrument to talk about, and it pops up kind of earlier in the song. You can hear in this section particularly, but it's just holding out one note, so it seeps in over time on that G. But it's not till the end of the bridge that we actually hear it proper. Now, it does repeat this same idea in the beginning of the bridge, but the synth patches that are applied here make it stand out a bit more, going from that held G, down to the F sharp, down to the D, and then ultimately on the C.
Verse.
The verses start Taylor pretty low in her range and pretty simplistic, besides the occasional eighth note melisma. You also notice how far these phrases are spaced out, a lot of silence between them.
I had a bad habit of missing lovers past.
In each following phrase within the verse, though, we do get a bit more going on. She kind of repeats those figures, so it's not just 2 separate ones. It's now one and then a pair of them.
My brother used to call it eating out of the trash. It's never gonna last.
As we get into the second half of the first verse, it essentially repeats that idea. Everything's sort of spaced out. We even get less melismas, though, but that's mostly because of the changed words.
I thought my house was haunted. I used to live with ghosts.
That goes as well for the following phrase, additionally.
And all the perfect couples said when you know, and when you don't.
We then get to the second verse, which starts off the same, but you'll notice we start getting more and more harmonic layers from Taylor Swift's backing vocals.
You couldn't understand it, why you felt alone.
You see here as we continue through the first half of the second verse, it always starts off with Taylor Swift by herself, but the second phrase has an additional harmony with her.
You were in it for real, was in her phone, and you were just a pose.
We then have another little change that we put into it. It's not direct harmonies, it's now back and forths between the main vocals and the backup vocals, the second of which in this particular phrase are also in harmonies.
And don't we try to love, we give it all we got.
That continues into the end of the second verse, but now we don't have harmonies at all. We actually have Taylor Swift singing with herself in full octaves.
Finally left the table, and what a simple thought. You're starving till you're not.
Pre-chorus.
The pre-chorus starts to pick up things. We have some back and forth between the main vocals and the harmonies, and we also have the main line being done in octaves for the most part.
And all of the foes and all of the friends have seen it before, they'll see it again.
That pretty much continues, but the second phrase is a bit truncated on I was wrong. We have this long held out note before we get into the first chorus.
Life is a song, it ends when it ends. I was wrong.
The second pre-chorus basically does the same thing, but we have added harmonies to everything. We now have a harmony in between the octaves that were being sung previously, and even the backup vocals now have their own harmony in thirds.
All of the foes and all of the friends have messed up before, they'll mess up again.
That continues into the back half of the second pre-chorus as well. We even have that long held out line at the end, again with an additional harmony.
Life is a song, it ends when it ends. You move on.
Chorus.
So the chorus is pretty much set up with this back and forth between the main vocal line, but then on each other sub-phrase, we have these thicker harmonies, usually in 4 parts.
But my mama told me it's alright. You were dancing through the lightning strikes.
You can typically hear the main vocal line outside of those harmonies due to the fact that it has a melisma where the other harmonies really do not, and everything always ends with that O, going that D, C, B, A, like we had in the guitars way back when.
Sleepless in the onyx night, but now the sky is opalite.
As we get to the second half of the chorus, you'll note that the harmonies have changed slightly, and even the main vocal line is being doubled an octave lower in most parts.
Oh my Lord, never made no one like you before.
This actually brings the harmonies a bit lower and almost fuller sounding to cut through everything else going on.
You had to make your own sunshine, but now the sky is opalite.
When we start off the second chorus, not only do we start off with those lower and fuller harmonies, but the main vocal line now has a bunch of harmonies on it as well.
And that's when I told you it's alright. You were dancing through the lightning strikes.
And if that weren't enough, as things continue on, we get additional harmonies from the backup vocals, doing these sort of suspension chords going from D sus4 to D major, just again like we had in the guitars earlier.
Sleepless in the onyx night, but now the sky is opalite.
That continues into the second half of the second chorus. On the main vocal lines, there's no more back and forth. It's all just now lush harmonies.
Oh my Lord, never met no one like you before.
In fact, the only real thing that doesn't get more harmonies is those O's at the very end.
Had to make your own sunshine, and now the sky is opalite.
And even after all that, on the third and final chorus, we get the lush harmonies on everything, as well as an additional ad-lib line over all of it.
Don't you sweat it, baby, it's alright. You were dancing through the lightning strikes.
Now, because everything is so dense at this point, there aren't too much, so you really hear that additional ad-lib usually in between as sort of a connecting thing from each phrase. Like for this one, on example, she goes, oh so, before we get into the sleepless in the onyx night.
Oh, so sleepless in the onyx night, but now the sky is opalite.
You can see it here as well. You really hear her on Oh My Lord when she's doing the drop-off and she goes higher. Similarly, you can hear when she says no because, well, there's no other vocals going on.
Oh my Lord, never met no one like you before, no.
It's interesting how when you can hear the ad-libs and when you can't, really emphasizes those slight changes that Taylor is making to that line before everything ends.
You had to make your own sunshine, and now the sky is opalite.
Bridge.
The The bridge starts off with just the main vocal lines on Taylor's kind of middle range, but because she's highlighting them out and kind of belting them, they really stand out.
This is just a star inside a teacup.
Because it's just that one main vocal line we hear, it's a little more active, a lot more eighth notes going through, not as much space, and at the very end, instead of going down like she's been doing, she now goes, well, up.
It's shelter here with me, my love. Thunder like a drum. This life will beat you up, 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 up.
But just like every other part of the vocals, as it continues, more things are added. Just like before, we now have additional harmonies on the main vocal line.
This is just a temporary speed bump.
And as those harmonies continue, they become thicker, now going from 2-part harmonies into 3-part harmonies.
But failure brings you freedom, and I can bring you.
Before ending on this full root position D7 chord in 4-part harmonies, with the D, the F sharp, the A, and then the C, and then they all shout love at the end. Considering it hasn't been too long since we last talked about a Taylor Swift song, having just done the Fate of Ophelia in October, it should still be kind of fresh in your mind, which is actually beneficial in this sense, because we can compare the two. Yes, it's from the same era of Taylor Swift, same album, but Fate of Ophelia had more of a dance bend to it, where this has more of a rock bend. You can also see the differences in vocal stylings that she uses between these two songs. Again, overall they're similar, but if you look very close, you start to see those differences from song to song. This is actually pretty pertinent, especially if you're listening to an entire album front to back. Regardless, for those who are getting tired of Taylor Swift or maybe have just been burnt out on her for a while, well, this is our one for the year, so
Don't you sweat it, baby, it's alright. You were dancing through the lightning strikes. Oh, so sleepless in the onyx night. But now the sky is opalite.
I guess this makes the second time we've done 2 songs from the same album, but the last one was the K-pop Demon Hunter soundtrack, so that was Huntrix and then Saja Boys, where this is, Taylor Swift both times. But hey, really cut down on my research time.
Oh my